Welcome to Noble, a network of owners, business leaders, and entrepreneurs. Here, we focus on the 5 stages of business: launching an idea, establishing a business, hiring employees, creating leaders, and then expanding your impact. We hope you enjoy today's session.
Bryan, thank you so much for being with us today.
Right, thank you for those kind words, and we're going to jump right in. Hopefully, everybody had a chance to take the assessment. I think most of the people who are here did. We had some who weren't able to complete it. That's okay. We'll figure it out as we go. We can always navigate whatever's in front of us. That's the good thing about organizational development work. You can always figure something out. You can always find a way to learn something, and we can always learn from each other. So we'll get through it. If you don't have your results, you'll still hopefully get a lot out of it, and we'll work through that. All right, so for today's objectives, is we are gonna, this obviously was based in DiSC. I think a couple of you said you had taken DiSC maybe before. Some of you I know said you did not take DiSC before. What DiSC is really, it's trying to look for patterns. So if you think about, there's 8 billion people on the planet, and God didn't make any two of us the same, right? We all have a unique fingerprint to start with, right? So, and we're all different, and there's a lot of ways we're different, but yet there's patterns sometimes in how we react and how we behave. And that's what DiSC tries to glean out, is what are your patterns? So if you ended up in the D or the dominance, that's where I end up. So I use that as the example usually. Not every D is the same as every other D, right? There's many things that make us different, but those patterns can help inform us about ourselves and inform us about others. And they can help inform us about how we react to certain situations, like today, where we're going to talk about vision, alignment, and execution, right? So it's going to apply that to those 3 areas. But we will spend the initial part looking at our DiSC results and trying to learn a bit more about those, because I know some of you are brand new to the DiSC, so we will spend a little bit of time on that, and then we'll start applying it to those 3 different leadership areas. All right? Any questions before we get started? All right, and I'm going to press on, and that's the 2 other areas that I talked about that we'll do. And it will, this is important, it will highlight your strengths. If you've done the report and looked at it, you'll have seen some of your strengths and opportunities both in there as well. So obviously we're going to leverage our strengths to do even better, and then we're going to help shore up our opportunities also to help us do better. This is my learning environment. So rather than a list of classroom norms, I focus on this one of my favorite scriptures of all time. And I found if we're here to help each other, which is what this scripture is saying, right? We're here to help each other. We're here to learn. That's one of the reasons I love working with adult learners, is because there's plenty of experiences. There's many times I walk out of a session having learned some things too. So we're all in it together, and Susie kind of set us up really well. Co-creating, I love that word. We're working together, we're learning from each other, so don't be afraid to push back, don't be afraid to challenge things. You can agree with things, disagree, it's all good, right? We're just here to learn and to help each of us learn, including myself. So we will start, as I said, with the DiSC style. So here, if you open up, this will be like this. So I'll just say this one time, but this will be like this every time, is I put the page number just to help keep us there. And then I put the picture of it too, again, just to help navigate it so you know where I'm at and what we're talking about and those kind of things. So obviously you're not intended to read this, but I'll talk to it for those of you, if you didn't have a chance to complete your report. You know, I'll be saying this in my own words, not their words. But then we'll just kind of walk through the report like that. So this first page really starts to talk about, you know, where this came from. This work of leaders is the title of it. And the organization I partner with for the DiSC takes it and applies it to different situations. So it's not just this one that they apply it to, there's other ones. I like that because for me, we want to make things practical. We want to be able to apply them, we want to be able to use them. I love theory, concept. I have papers all over my wall I write on, I love it, but we got to use it, right? We got to use it quickly for me to be happy. So that's why I like this particular tool. So this one obviously is applying to those 3 leadership activities. And what they did is they tried to look for buckets. So there was 350 different experts that went into organizations and thought, what is the work of leaders? Hence the title, right? And what are the big buckets that they have to work on, and how can we help them be better at that? And so that's what they came up with. You gotta start with a vision, and we'll talk about what's important about the vision. And then you have to get people aligned on it, even if it's just yourself, right? I know there's some small businesses in the group. Some of us are even solopreneurs, or my wife and I work together, but it's just the two of us, so we're smaller, obviously, too. But even us can get aligned. You can even get aligned with just yourself so you know where you're headed. And then, of course, we have to execute. I think Rob says this really well. He says you got to pray and then follow through, right? I like the way he says that, short and sweet, but it's true, right? We can't just pray and then receive. We have to follow through with our end of it. So I think that's important there too. So that's kind of the background of where this comes from. So it's definitely very research-based, validated, all those good statistical things we love for those of us who struggled through statistics in college. And so then the next part is kind of the cornerstones. This applies to any size organization. So this isn't just for big organizations, small organizations. So I have been blessed to be able to work in all sizes of organizations. I like it. It gives me different perspectives. So I've been very blessed in that way. But there are certain things that are kind of the same, right? And this is one of them. We all need a vision. We need to be able to get aligned and understand clarity on that. And then we need to be able to execute on it, whether a one-person shop or 120,000 people across the globe, right? It doesn't matter. This all applies to it. So that's kind of doing that. And then I already touched on the DiSC part where, okay, you're going to get a DiSC scale, you're going to get a dot on a graph, but even if somebody lands on the exact same place as you are, doesn't mean you're the same person, right? You have lots of other things that are coming into play as to how, you react in any situation. But again, these patterns can help us do better, help us to learn where we should focus on if we want to improve. And then the final thing at the bottom of that page really kind of lays out the model. We'll go into a lot more detail on that, obviously, but it's really just talking about the vision. You're getting clear on what you want to do, making sure that we have a true north, right? This is where we're heading. And then, of course, we got to get aligned on that, even if it's in our own head, even for a single entrepreneur, a solopreneur. And we can even get alignment from others, right? There might be people helping you out. There might be other people you interact with. So it's just getting aligned on that. And then execution, we have to make it happen. So what are the things, this report will talk about, what are the things that it takes to make it happen? And then how do we typically respond based off of our DiSC? All right, any questions on the overall layout on that first page? All right, now we're going to go to your DiSC. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to walk down through as if you've taken the report. If you haven't, you can start thinking about it. But while I have people messing with their report, I'm going to walk us through how we can maybe predict what our style is if we didn't finish the DiSC. So that's how we'll handle the duality of the situation. So this is just an example. This isn't me. I do have my report over there. I end up over here, just in case anybody wonders, like towards the outer edge, directly in the D, and I'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. Where your dot ends up does tell something, right? The further out on the circle that you go, the more likely you are to consistently exhibit the behaviors that go with that. And we'll talk about what those are in a minute. So the further in we go, the more likely you are to kind of float or navigate in between some of the different styles. So that's how that goes. We all use all of it, right? So even a driver is going to look for data, right? They're not going to just ignore data and not think about it at all when they're making decisions, choosing things, but it is your tendency. It's kind of what you go to first. It's what you know. And that's why I like these kind of instruments, because it helps us to not be victim of what our natural tendencies are, right? Your natural tendencies are to just push forward. Once you know that about yourself, you can say, oh, wait a minute, maybe I better get some data first, right? So that's how we can use this different styles. And then this is a little bigger so you can see it. This starts to tell you and there's different DiSC reports out there. So it's like most of this organizational development stuff. Somebody really smart came up with the idea and a theory, right? and then other people operationalized it and monetized it. And that's happened with DiSC as well. So you'll see different DiSC reports. They're all very much based off the same theory, but this one is a little bit unique in that it cuts the pie, so to speak, into three. Each quadrant is broken into three other areas. And the idea behind that is, gives us a little bit more detail, right? And so that's how that looks. So you'll not only see what quadrant am I in when you look at your dot, you'll see what piece of pie did I go in, and we'll talk more about the overall model as we go. The one thing I started pointing out just about 2 years ago, I've used this for many, many years, and I never knew why the I was small and the other ones are capital. And someone asked me, that was one of the situations where I walked out learning something. Someone asked me, why is the I not a capital letter? I'm like, no idea. Let's Google it. So we Googled it, and basically what happened was it was a typo, and they liked the way it looked, so they kept it. Right? So not important, but funny story. All right, so now for those of you who have taken it, we're on page 4, as it says, and what I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm going to give the instructions for 2 separate pages, and then I'm going to move on, but I want the ones who have taken the report to go through and do this. And this is just a wild example scribbled on. But what you're going to do is, this is personalized to you. So this isn't, any old body. This isn't somebody who falls in the C quadrant. It's not even just somebody who falls directly in the middle of the C quadrant. It's taken every answer that you've given and come up with a report for you. So it's very unique to you. Having said that, this is very accurate. It's the validity rates and stuff are pretty high. However, it's not 100%. So what does that tell us? Maybe not everything's right. Usually it's pretty darn close. Usually there's a lot of, yeah, that does sound like me, but sometimes not, right? Not everything's probably going to be true. It's accurate, but not 100% accurate. So what you're going to do is you're going to read down through this if you've completed the report, and you're going to check mark things that, yeah, that really sounds like me, right? That's really kind of who I am. X out anything you say, no, I know I get that maybe some C's are like that, but that's not really me. So you're going to X that out. And then if you're not sure any of them, you can just put a question mark. The reason we're doing this exercise is so that we take our understanding of ourselves to a deeper level, right? So we're going to understand a little bit more once we know what quadrant we're in. We're going to understand a little bit more once we know which piece of the pie we're in. But we're going to understand even further once we start reading this and then check marking things like that. So that's on page 4. And then I'm also going to have you do the next page too, as I walk with those of us who didn't get a chance to take the report. I'll have you do this page too. What this is showing, if you see the bars over here, you have not only shading, you have some extra shading on this particular example. The number of people, I don't know what it is, or even the percentage, I don't remember, but most likely you don't have those bars in there. But maybe some of you do as well. But it's a lower percentage of the population that takes this and have those. What this is telling us is where do we like to focus our energy and what do we kind of naturally gravitate towards. So if you see the words around the outside of the circle, that is also in your book, it gives you what those are. So for this particular result, this person, you can see they ended up in the C quadrant, but they have some that bleeds up into the D, some into the S, and then they also have that extra shading area, which brings in a 4th. So everybody has 3 words around the circle, and some people may have 4. Again, statistically, it's likely that nobody in this group does, but maybe you do. That's why I like to explain it. So if you think about this particular report, you can see their focus areas are being resolute, being deliberate, being humble, and being inclusive. This should be page 5.
It says shading and priorities on the top.
Yes, so the page looks like this one. Yeah, I just wanted to blow it up to make it more clear. So yeah, that's page 5.
So the extra shading on the S, how is that, I guess, formed or calculated for certain people?
Yeah, like giving an exact answer will be above my pay grade. But having said that, I do understand like how it takes place. It calculates all of your answers. So all the choices that you made as you went down through that, it determines then, as it does all the math and statistics and based off of, all the research that they did and things like that, it determines if you end up having this. So in high level theory, I do understand the mathematics of it. I've never gotten that deep into it, but this just means you've answered questions that kind of bleed over into here more often than the normal person or the average person. I put it in air quotes if somebody didn't see it, because, it's not really about normal or abnormal, but, most people who end up in the C would be like without that shading, right? So that just means you answer more times over in that area than the typical, that's probably a better word, than the typical person who ends up in the C.
What does it mean if you have 4 words? 'Cause I got
It just means you're special.
four. I'll take it. I'll take it.
It probably, well, not probably, it does mean you're more versatile.
Okay.
And it also means that then and again, we all do all these things, but as compared to those of us who don't have shading in there, let's just say, as compared to this person without shading, you're more likely to use inclusive behaviors. Yes. All right, other questions?
You said who typically fall, everybody fall in C?
No.
You said,
Typically, people who, like if you stacked up the number of people in C, they would have a profile more like this one without the shading. So let me go back to this one. It's easier to see. So the typical person that falls into the C statistically shows that they won't have included this inclusive as one of their focus areas.
okay.
They'll fall under these 3.
Yeah, I'm C.
Okay,
What are those bars?
these bars, this means you have an extra focus area. I call these focus areas. Like this is where we tend to gravitate towards things that we naturally do. So if you were a C without this, you would be most likely to, in any given situation, be resolute, deliberate, and humble. This person here had the extra bars, so they're also more likely to be inclusive, right?
So the ones that are grayed out, they are not our focus areas? No, they're like.
Yes, they're not focus areas, that's correct. Doesn't mean we don't ever do it, it's just not what we naturally gravitate towards, and probably under pressure, we're not likely to go to these either, right? And that's another thing that kind of happens, as we get older, we start being able to flex more and more, right? That's one of the things that happens to us, and we're able to navigate situations differently and better. But if we get under pressure, we kind of go to our default. Might be good, might be bad, depends on the situation. But that means that that's not a focus area for this person. Now, everybody else, depends where you ended up as to what your actual shading looks like.
Is this yours or this is?
That is not mine. I can show you mine.
Oh, I don't know. It's fine. I just thought, I was trying to.
Yeah, mine, let me look at it quick. Yeah, that's right. Like I end up like right in here, and then my shading goes like up in here. And I do not have the extra shading.
Oh.
All right, any other questions? These are good questions. It helps us all learn. Questions help us learn. All right, so the group who has the report, I'll go back to it. You're going on page 4, marking it up just like this. And then on page 5, you're going to that page and marking it up just like this. Let me know if there are any questions or more about what the instructions are. And then if you haven't completed the report, you can still start to predict where you ended up. So one of the easiest ways to do that is if you think about the model, it's really broken up. The top half is fast-paced and outspoken. The bottom half is cautious and reflective. So think about which one of those you end up in. Do I end up in the top or the bottom? It's easier than trying to think which quadrant do I want to go in, right? So I put myself in the top half or the bottom half, and then of course I go left to right, and I say, am I more questioning and skeptical, or am I more accepting and warm? And then that's going to get you into a quadrant, right? So for example, if I'll use myself, I'm fast-paced and outspoken, and then I'm questioning and skeptical. So then I end up in this quadrant.
I'm sorry, what page is this?
This is not on a page.
Oh,
This is if you didn't complete the assessment. I'm helping you predict what your style is, as well as if you're ever trying to say, man, I just really don't work that well with that person, and they haven't taken the DiSC, or they won't tell me what my DiSC is, or what their DiSC is, then I can start to predict maybe what they are. You always got to be questioning yourself about it, because it's only semi-accurate, but sometimes you can get some clues, right, if you do that. And then here are some words that help you figure out, okay, once you say, okay, I think I'm the D, and I can read about that here. That's, again, this is not in the report, so I can read about that here and say, yeah, that kind of makes sense, or wait a minute, man, let me think about that again. And then the final place, and this is in the report on page 6, this is kind of a quick takeaway guide. This is another way, if you haven't taken the assessment, I can start to predict, okay, this is what my style is. So I'm gonna stop talking now and give a few minutes for people to mark up their assessments or try to predict where you think you are from a DiSC style.
You can get 2 letters instead of 1, because I got DI.
Yes, and that goes back to, it's easiest to show it here. Right, so her question was, she ended up with DI, so she has 2 letters, and that's the nice thing about this one, it breaks it up a little bit more. So as you start exhibiting or responding at these behaviors that fall over here, then that starts moving your dot up to the top, which gives you the DI. If you started to exhibit, if you did D, someone else may have, landed in D, but they exhibit some of these conscientious behaviors, then you start seeing your dots show up down here. So you're just starting to include more of the other quadrant as you go around this circle. So, right here or here?
Like close on the D, but like right by the I on the other side.
Okay. Yeah, so that means even more so than somebody that was further away from the line, you tend to exhibit those behaviors.
My shading is like almost perfect, like equally in the squares.
Ah. So I'll leave it there for those who, yeah, if you want me to come around and see your report, I can.
Like it's,
Oh, yeah.
it's like almost perfect on C and D and almost an S and I.
Yeah. Yeah, so you're like a CD.
Yeah, that's what I was labeled as CD.
Yes. If you have questions as you're doing this, feel free to ask, and then online as well. If there are any questions, just let me know.
Can you have shades on all the 4 colors?
What's that?
Can you have shades on all the 4?
Yeah. The question was, can you have shades on all 4? You definitely can. Most times you're gonna have at least a little bit. Some people have more than others, but most times you're gonna have at least a little bit in each of the 4. Yeah. Yes. So then if you think about it.
Susan might be able to. Maybe this is a mobile website, you can do there, but it's.
So maybe you end up in here, if you think about the, it's not up there, remember how this, it is there again, maybe it's kind of over here. The other thing to think about is,
Do you have her
it doesn't
email
mean you don't
address?
do any of the other things too. It's like kind of what is your schedule,
Now, and what
things like
I
that.
did
Based on what
here
you're
is the
saying,
password.
I think
Okay,
maybe
if they don't,
I
are
would
just
up here and maybe have a little bit of shading over there, maybe, right?
But I think it's very.
Yeah.
What's your name?
It was asking the question
Garnet.
when you have an idea.
Oh, no, Garnet Miller. Here we are.
You go to.
Yeah, and I think the thing to think about, I'll break this for classes, it's a very important point, is it doesn't mean we can't do, the other things. It just means that's not our natural tendency, I think it takes a little bit more effort. So let's assume for a minute, I'm not saying it is, because this report is not 100% accurate. I get that, right? But let's assume this is 100% accurate. You probably have learned, like, I think about the things you're involved in doing. If you're not doing a bunch of this, you're not getting anything done, right? What you do is hard, right? And it takes a lot of drive, energy and stuff like that. So it could be that you learn to avoid that, right? So that's still your natural tendency, but yet you've kind of learned to do these behaviors that are gonna make you successful. Because as human beings, we're always kind of gravitating towards being successful. So we try to figure stuff out, right? And sometimes we don't know about the DiSC, we don't know we're doing, okay, we're doing driver behaviors now, or dominant behaviors now. It doesn't matter, I'm doing what I need to get it done. And then so I start exhibiting one of those. Could be why you're noticing that. But it's always gonna be true, almost always gonna be true that, you know, like both of you said, yeah, some of them here and some of them over there makes sense to me, right? It's not always gonna be, yep, that list and nothing on the other list. It'll never be that.
Yeah, because I see my strengths here,
Yes.
like I can see how my score is showing strong.
Yeah.
What page is that you need to work on?
For the, we didn't get there yet.
Oh, okay, I know I read it somewhere. Like
Yeah,
that. So
Yeah, no, that's more towards the end. So
I told her, this is how I know why we get along, because everything that I'm not, she is, and vice versa.
Oh, well.
yes, because that can, okay, as people are finishing that up, I'm getting a lot of good nuggets here in the room. And so I want to share them with the group because it's really, you know, key and critical learning. One of them was, okay, as I look at these words and these lists, like I agree with some of these that, you know, ended up were in my quadrant, but there's other ones on the other places of the list that I think are true also, and then there's some on the list of the quadrant I ended up in, and I don't really agree with those. That's probably always gonna happen, right? Maybe there's a case where someone doesn't, yeah. Question.
When we're looking at it and identifying what applies to us, right, sometimes we could be like biased to ourselves, so when we say that, at what point do you take into like what other people would say and not necessarily what you think about yourself?
Yeah, I think the more we can answer our true selves is better. And then sometimes, you know, this instrument doesn't, I don't think this instrument allows it with this particular application. But there are some times when certain instruments similar to this, where you do ask outsiders to say what you're like. So that is something you can do. But this one doesn't do that. But so there's always gonna be, because we use all of it. And then the other thing that can happen, like if I'm over here in the I, right? It doesn't mean all of these things are gonna be true. And sometimes, you know, as I'm navigating life, you know, a high percentage, probably the high 90s, I don't know, I never saw a study or anything, but high percentage of us want to be successful, right? So we're navigating life, whether we know about DiSC or not, doesn't matter. Like, we're trying to be successful, so we're exhibiting behaviors, and then if there's something to accomplish what we want to accomplish, I need to do some more driving stuff and get stuff done and get results, right? I'm gonna navigate towards that, right? Doesn't mean it's my overall preference, it means I've gotten better at it, right? So that's kind of how it is. If you think about just a very simple example, if you think about introversion and extroversion, right? I'm very much an introvert, but my whole job is doing extroverted activities, right? It's because there's other things driving me to do that, right? And it's honestly, it's God through, and this will be a story for another time, but God's taking me through a process to get comfortable in front of people. So, it doesn't mean I'm not an introvert, right? Once I've had enough, I'm going to my office and drawing on flip charts, right? But it means I can do that. It doesn't change who I am. It just means I'm exhibiting more energy to do that, right? So that's kind of what happens sometimes. And then another example that came up in the walk around discussions was, the reason we get along so well is because you're the opposite of me, right? The reason I want to share that is because that can be true. It also can be not true, right? So for Sherry and I, we are the opposites, the exact opposites. I'm over here, she's over there, right? So that can get in the way, right? Because we see things differently, we approach things differently. But if we value that difference, that's when it becomes synergy, like you two shared, right? That's when it becomes synergy if we're valuing those differences. So the reason why it's important to learn about things like these and learn about how to interact with others better, is because most times if we don't understand we're just different, right? We assign all kinds of negative intent. Oh, they're just trying to slow the project up. That's why they're asking for too much information and all this data, right? And the person that is gathering the data is saying, Bryan's just crazy. He's trying to get everything done. He's scheduling meetings. He doesn't even know what meetings to schedule yet, right? So those are the things we tend to, as human beings, assign a negative intent, and that's when it becomes a rub, right? And that's when we don't interact well. But if we're looking at, oh yeah, they're trying to get data. We do need data. I know I don't want to take time to get data, but we need data, right? And if they're saying, yeah, we got to make sure we hit deadlines, right? Otherwise, we don't hit our goals and things like that. So then we work together better, right? As we try to navigate that. So that's kind of those two things. All right, good job with that. Any other questions or comments on that piece of it? All right. I'm going to grab a drink. And now we're going to move on to, so that was the DiSC part of it. Obviously, that's something we can go deeper into, but that'll be for another day, because now we want to get to work applying, our foundational knowledge about this to these different areas. So this is on page 7. As we said, we're going to work on vision, alignment, and execution. You can see here that we have this broken into different areas. We're going to end up having all these things on a continuum, right? So we'll see where we're good, where we have opportunities to see that. So each one of those has 3 areas. So as an example, vision has exploration, boldness, and testing assumptions. And then alignment has clarity, dialogue, and inspiration. And then execution has momentum, structure, and feedback. And then they have sub areas that we're going to look at. Those are the things that are going to be on the continuums that you have in your report. So the thing to know about these are best practices. So any human behavior or anything you do done too much can become a detriment. So just as a simple example, being detail-oriented sometimes is very important, very critical. But if you spend too much time gathering details when they're not needed, right, it gets very hard. So using another example from my old world of being a tool and die maker, right, if someone wants a tolerance that's, kind of semi-close, I can machine it down to whatever tolerance they want, but it's taking more time and more money and not adding value. So that's how to think about this. Now, having said all that, this continuum is going to be just a little bit different, Because what they did, if you remember, I said they did a lot of research, a lot of validation, a lot of statistics. And what they found was on these continuums, they've stopped the continuum, right, where best practice is. So being at the far right of the continuum in this situation is what's gonna be best, right? Again, it doesn't mean, I've talked about this a little bit, but it doesn't mean you can't do the other ones. Doesn't mean if you're on the far left of the continuum, you aren't any good at it or you can't do it. It just means you're gonna spend more energy because it's not naturally kind of what you want to do. And then the other thing to know about is you're probably gonna have a lot of them to the left, right? Because statistically 50% have not 5 to 9 of them are on the left-hand side. It's just because if you think about those three things, they're kind of different, right? Creating a vision, executing a vision is a little bit different. So we're probably gonna naturally tend to want to do and be better at doing some things and not the others. And if you think about those three different stages of, getting a business going or keeping a business going or taking it in a new direction, depending on what you are. Now, for us entrepreneurs who are smaller, right? For working in a big company, we can delegate some of that out, right? If we're an entrepreneur, guess who does it? We do, right? Yeah, we have to do it. So it doesn't mean we have to give up, right? It just means we have to know, okay, when I'm doing this one, that's gonna be my struggle, right? So I'm gonna have to spend more energy. I'm gonna have to think about it more. I'm gonna have to be more deliberate about that particular one. So that's how we'll think about it in the context of our group. Any questions on that? All right, then we're gonna start off with vision. And here, I love Susie's intro, like the co-creation, and I think it is, and that's one of the things we try to do here at Noble is use biblical principles to help run our businesses. And I think there's, 3 different ways that we can do that. The one I'm gonna use today is scripture, so we're gonna look at some scripture on the biblical perspective of these 3 different areas, right? I think the other 2 ways sometimes that can be beneficial to us are just listening to the stories of the Bible, the parables and those things. And I think there's a lot of value in just looking at, especially if you think about Jesus, just how he handled certain things. Not that he told you to do it that way, but the way he did it can be a learning experience too. So that's how we can start to integrate, these biblical principles into our businesses. Today, we're going to focus on the scripture, which I think is more advice giving, direction giving, right? That's how I think about that bucket for us. So I'm going to have the group respond, say, what do you think these scriptures, so we'll start off with Proverbs 29:18. What do you think that's trying to tell us about vision?
You're asking?
Yes.
Where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint, but blessed is the one who heeds wisdom's instruction. So to me, it just means if you don't have an idea, if you don't spend time cultivating like who you want to be, where you want to go, your values, like you'll always be, to me, a victim of circumstances or one of those people that is just taking life as it comes and you look up and you're in a position you don't want to be in, because vision a lot of times answers all the questions. If I know that I want to go in a certain direction, I know what to say no to, because it's not in alignment with where I say that I want to go or who I want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, that is awesome. That's better than my answer I already given. I like that a lot. Thank you. And then what about the next one?
I mean, I can try again.
Don't be afraid of getting it wrong. We're all friends here. You won't get it wrong anyway because it's your interpretation.
Make a plan and see it through.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
like what it says about write it down.
Yes, make it.
I feel like there's something that happens when the vision aligns with the action. A lot of times when you're writing things down and you see it, you can kind of like take it out of your mind and making it plain on the tablet, or like when you have the vision, or making it plain even on paper. It's like, okay, I see it, I have it in my mind, I see it, okay, that doesn't really apply with like what I thought. It kind of allows you to like take the weeds out of your idea.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Our brains absolutely process information differently. Whether we're saying it, thinking it, saying it out loud, or writing it on paper, you're absolutely right. It's a different process. It adds more depth and more and understanding, I should say, not more value, but more understanding.
As task oriented, writing it down helps me focus on completing that task and not getting more out into the weeds.
Yeah.
What sticks out for me is the word herald in that, the earlier sentence there. And I just looked up what it meant. And one of the things that I'm seeing here is a person or a thing that precedes or comes before, forerunner. And I think that that's really key with writing it down, like we were saying. I think that it's helpful when it's something that's written down so you can have a clarity of what exactly needs to be done. And it's after you. I think it's a legacy that you leave behind as well, if something is written down in that way.
Yeah, so it's bigger than just this time. It's
Right.
bigger. Yeah. Susie?
So I looked up Proverbs 29:18 in the New Living Translation, and I understand it better. It says, when people do not accept divine guidance, they run wild, but whoever obeys the law is joyful. So that was really, it helped me like dissect that and figure out what they were talking about. But then the Habakkuk 2:2-3, where it says, write it down on tablets so that they may herald and run with it. And it's revelation and it waits appointed time. Makes me think that's what God did, right? He had people write down his words to his people. And by that, we can run with it. We still use the word to know what his guidance is. And we know that it's true and we can trust it, and everything that hasn't played out yet will certainly come and not delay. I've never noticed that scripture before, but right now I'm really excited about it.
I think that's what a visionary does, and it's not enough for us to just have it in our heads,
Yes.
and just pontificate over what it is, but it's so important that it's actually written down.
Very good.
When I think about the first scripture too, and it says the people like cast off restraint, it's like you're giving in to not having boundaries. And when you don't have boundaries, it makes me think about the scripture that says like, you may be able to do all things, but not everything is permissible, right? So that's what boundaries or restraint helps us to do. That's what vision does. It puts us in alignment, it puts us on a path so that, the Lord can order the steps. But if there are no restraints, if there are no boundaries, you're just all over the place.
Yeah, very good. All right, thank you everyone for sharing that. That went really well. Honestly, full disclosure, when I was putting this together and trying to make a decision, I was going to share why I included those. And I asked my wife, who always gives me good advice, do you think I should just share what I do or ask the group? She's like, ask the group. And I'm so glad I did, because this will be my learning. There's reasons that they are applicable that I didn't even think of. So that's going to be my learning for today. I'm sure I'm going to get 2 more. So good. So thank you for that. All right. So this is the vision trivia. So I'm going to put up some visions. Most of them are older. So, and bigger companies, just because I want to be recognizable to you. It's just going to be a fun way to say, whose vision was that, and see if we get it right or wrong. So put a computer on every desk in every home.
Microsoft?
Yep, Microsoft. And then organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Yep.
That's my brand. I can do everything.
Build a place where people can come to find and discover anything they might want. Yep.
The online part.
Yeah, that's probably true. Bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. Nike. And then deliver happiness to customers, employees, and vendors.
Amazon Prime.
We know where her heart is.
This one's last known, probably. Did you say?
In the West, Amazon is not in Africa.
There you go.
IBM.
Oh.
So that was a little.
They do have the best customer support.
Yeah.
What do they do? I never even heard of them.
It's a shoe company.
Oh, okay.
A lot of businesses model their customer support off of what Zappos does.
Like all shoes or just certain areas of shoes?
I'm not sure about their product, but I know a lot of businesses go after the model.
Oh.
I thought it was a restaurant or something.
And then co-creating a space with committed leaders to integrate the kingdom of God into the business.
Noble.
And that's important for a lot of reasons, and I'll probably hit on this a few more times, but obviously it's important because that's our organization. But the other thing is, when you start thinking about some of these activities, like, just to give one example, we'll look at them more as we get it deeper into it. But if you think about vision, one of the things it's gonna ask you to close it off or keep it open, right? And you might start to think, well, I'm a 1 or 2 person shop, like who am I gonna like open it up to, and where am I gonna get more information to, refine it and make sure it's right and all those things? Well, the answer is Noble, right? That's where you're gonna come to for help, get more perspectives. Like, we might not be directly in each other's businesses, but we're here to help each other and co-create, to use Susie's terms. So like, you've got, trying to refine your vision, or ask, is it big enough? Is it, because those are pretty big, like the ones we just went through, right? Those are big. They aren't just, okay, let's sell some computers, right? It's like computer in every home, right? It really brings people in, say, oh, they care about me. They want to put a computer in my house, right? So it's kind of that kind of a thing. And it's true for each of those, and even alignment, right? You can help do that through Noble. So this is kind of your support to help us get through it. All right, so here's defining vision. We did it first in biblical terms because that's most important. And then, of course, the perspective in your report that you have here is on page 8. And it really kind of defines it as an imagined future condition, right? So that's kind of the brunt of the definition of it. Why is vision important? We already hit on this a little bit, but let's just pick out a few of the things that we talked about during the initial discussion.
I believe it gives people an idea of what's possible.
Yeah.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
Why is vision important? I think you had a really good one. Helps set boundaries.
I think for me, vision is important because when you're in business, there are a lot of things that are important, and then there are things that are urgent, and then there are things that are for the future. Like, and sometimes when you're the person doing it all, sometimes you have a hard time deciphering what to take action on.
Yeah.
So I think vision can align steps, like.
That gives the direction.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And then who creates vision? Obviously, if you're a smaller company, or it's just you and someone else, it's gonna be that group. But if you think of a larger organization, or how even a small company could maybe think about creating vision, who do you think should be involved?
Everyone.
Everyone, yeah, absolutely. So even if you're a worldwide huge company, you should get other people involved in it, right? Obviously, if you're a 75,000 employee company, not every 75,000, but you can get people in other groups to do it. If you're, I know there are some people involved in Noble that, are mid-sized businesses, they should be getting people involved. And then if it's just you, you can get your family members. A lot of times they might not be in business, they might not be part of the business, but guess what? They can have input into you, they can help guide you. And then, of course, Noble can provide that as well.
I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, vision is created by individual. Initially, it's generated by one person, like in a community. The one person sees future and then mobilize the surroundings. We cannot simply say it comes from a group. It's not like a thing that happens automatically. I think it's generated by a single person and engulfs the surroundings. That's what I'm thinking of.
Abraham, Moses,
Right.
David.
I agree, but I think with all those people, you still needed a community to enhance that vision. Like, you can be one person and you start the vision and you see it,
But you still gonna need like a group of people. I mean, you can do it by yourself,
Absolutely.
but you're not automatically safe. That's what I'm saying.
Like the scripture today about wise counsel, like we need that wise counsel and the clarity and the collaboration is what makes it more
Yeah, and I
powerful
think-
to be more powerful.
In business, it can be difficult to, I feel like we wanna be inclusive, we wanna love people, we want people to be a part of their vision, but I do find that sometimes, like, you can't please everybody. I feel like I make a opportunity and a platform for people's vision or idea or whatever to be heard,
Yeah,
but, you know, in the back of my mind, it's kind of like,
it may not be incorporated.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
so.
In our businesses, we're not gonna target every market, not everybody's gonna be your customer, not everybody's gonna be happy, we should never have to satisfy everybody. But we still need, like, if you're to lean on a family member or a friend to pick apart your business, because you might think you have a great idea, but you're in the, I'm a visionary, I'm making that idea known, but then you need that one friend or somebody to go, hey, like, here's the issues I see, and you might not see that, so you need that counsel.
Yeah.
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 I think that hits on what I would share too, is, and maybe your experience is different, we all have different experiences, but in my experience, I've seen too, is a lot of times, especially when you're talking about smaller entrepreneurial type businesses, it usually does initiate with one person, right? That brings, okay, this is what I wanna do. And then, I think it's not necessarily that initial vision, but maybe more the refinement of it, crafting it, saying, what are we gonna do, what we're not gonna do, to the earlier point, is where you can maybe get that, but, you know, I don't know, maybe your experience was different with that, do you see it being this, are you thinking of it being the same as the initial idea, or are you focused more on just that initial idea?
I'm talking about the initial idea, who generates
Yes,
the idea.
yeah, a lot of times, I agree with you there, yeah. A lot of times it is like, I wanna do this, that was true for my business, right, I had an idea, this is what I wanna do, and it changed so many times as I got the counsel, but that initial idea still sometimes is from one person.
And as a leader, you incorporate, like you're saying,
Yeah.
people to be able to give their input, because you want people to feel a part of it.
Yes,
Because if they don't, then they may very well go against
No
Yes.
buy-in.
what it is. So you want them to feel they have a say in what their thoughts are important, but as that leader, you're thinking, I'm hoping you all are thinking the same thing that I'm thinking, you know, and then sort of kind of bring that all together.
yeah, I think that's true, and I think as you navigate that, the encouragement I always give leaders is because sometimes we do, like, think about that, like, I wanna get more people involved, and we are gonna support what we create together, all those things are true. But I do encourage leaders to always have that, like, no, this is my initial idea, to your point, right? And this is where I wanna go, and I get that input, I don't have to take it all, right? And if it's on a complete different direction, maybe I'd say, well, no, that's not really what I'm doing. So I think it's always important for a leader to know he doesn't have to accept, he or she doesn't have to accept every idea that comes, because it might just completely morph the idea into where it's not even the same thing anymore. So I think those are good points. So thank you for pushing back on those things and having a discussion. That's absolutely what the iron sharpens iron means. So good job. All right, so this one on crafting a vision. It's just as a reminder, these are the three drivers that we've looked at. And then here on this one, this is on page 9. So we're back into the report again. And this is page 9, and you're gonna read your results. These, underneath each of the continuums is your results. So not generic results, not somebody else's results, your results are in here. So I'll just give you a minute to read those. Kind of identify, is it a strength for you? Is it not a strength for you? And then maybe we'll just have you discuss, just like, it's gonna be real quick, 2 minutes, with, somebody sitting near you, about, especially if it's an opportunity for you, what are some things you might be able to do? So the continuum, the first one is seeking closure and then remaining open. And I'll use this one to explain why, being on the right is the best practice. It's because based off of answers over time, being as far to the right as you can can be true. Having said that, obviously we can't work on our vision for 6.5 years. Right? We aren't gonna make any progress. So, right, there is a time to close it off, but we don't want to close it off too soon. So that's kind of what that's saying, and that's how this particular results work. And then the bottom one is prioritizing details and prioritizing big picture, right? So again, when you're creating vision, right, that's when we want to do the big picture. When we're executing, maybe the big picture isn't quite as important, but when we're thinking about vision, right, that's where we're trying to go. So just read your results and then think about any opportunities you might have and then discuss them with your neighbor. Just a couple of minutes to do that, so go through it pretty quickly.
If you are more towards if you are more towards the remote component.
Hey, Bryan.
Yes.
You got a question?
If you are more towards the remote component.
No, you're good to go. I'm coming for advice. I'm coming for you. And then this one, maybe too much on the details. During the vision.
I'm the should be
Think about the vision, look at
I'm here.
I'm very detail oriented.
Right here. Okay.
And then the big picture, what is the big
Yes.
picture?
So that's where you can think about, what are some activities that keep it more open. Setting up a one-on-one. Saying, okay, for next, are you a business owner? Okay.
And I'm here like, girl, it's my
Yes. Okay. And then you do the business together. Okay, so maybe.
But I really do think that that's something that.
Do it right now. But you can say, okay, I'm gonna set up a however you.
So many
Right, and we're gonna ask what's possible and like, is this some questions about, is this vision big enough? If we reach that, is that really what we're after? Just kind of those open questions. Set a topic, somebody in here, right, and say, hey, I just wanna let
So I'm like, I will read this, because it was really hard. About being in the middle of this. But then there's a couple of minors. Because this can keep you from fucking minded out there. Oh man, that's my mind right there.
I'm in the same thing.
We were the same age.
Gotta do, right?
What was your,
Yeah.
could your report come
So I'm
up?
confused on this part, closure.
Just really
Design therapy.
She's like,
Close
no.
to see.
So we're gonna apply this to vision. So it's
Is that kind of like close-minded? Like, I have this thing in mind, and I want to do
So
that way,
it's a matter of.
rather than taking my
You're in
idea
line.
and working it into something that's
I
not
can do that.
I think we do good on this, because you start asking me something.
Usually focused on getting one goal done.
And then wonder why it's not working
One,
or
if you
multiple.
want to collaborate,
Yeah, or
some
like,
cases realizing the
if I
value,
take somebody's
focus
input,
on
then I
details,
have to
realizing the value of
like,
looking at a big
they might
picture.
try to pull me in a
and
different
decide
direction,
what's-
and I'm more like, no, I need to
where-
focus
where
on
we
this
focus.
direction.
When we're talking about topic tasks,
Yeah.
what are we gonna focus on? What happens in these situations?
So I think that's where, I think that's where it comes in for me, because I'm always like right now, I'm like hyper focused on the ADAS market.
And so you're never on the same
I'm
page.
bypassing
So you say,
other
okay,
people
we're gonna talk
because I
about
have
the
more
picture for
focus.
some time.
People are like, oh, you should do this, you should
And
do
then
that.
we're gonna, what
I
kind of
need to
details?
AV.
Whatever you
I'm more
end
open
up
to that.
deciding, right? Because then you're on the same page, working through the same thing.
That's really good.
So
So
what
might
might
be
be,
creative, but then down here, but when it comes to the details, it
What might be is the big picture.
might be
yeah.
what is a big warning. For
See,
being
me,
able.
big picture work backwards.
Mine,
She's
I mean,
like.
I heavily relied on to like closing,
And
if
I'm
you
not
can go
supposed,
back
I
and look
never
at my,
said about it. When you say it, I'll be like,
what was the
yeah,
assessment
right.
Doug did?
And that's how.
I mean, this all aligned.
Yeah.
You're not
It's like,
upset, you realize she's not trying to.
this gives me a little more information on certain things. I think working news things give me, but I
Yeah.
think
Well, I feel like
Versus they're just trying to add more detail.
Yeah, I feel like I'm a coach, so I know the staff members early. In our first couple of
like, I think this
conversations,
one's
so
helping.
don't
I
be
haven't
mad, I'm
focused too
just
much on
thinking
certain
something. And
things.
once I realized, like, okay,
Where
she
you
needs
use
this.
contrast seem like that's
Yeah.
the-
It's like,
this
she
is a
needs
good
this to
thing,
move
but then
on.
this is,
I'm like,
hey,
okay,
there's
good
a,
question.
trying to focus on too much over here, you need to go.
All right, I'm gonna bring us back together. So we have a lot of these to get through these. There's some good discussions. So the idea is, it's an area that you're not strong in, thinking about ways to overcome that and stand that up. So we had some good ideas on that. All right, next we're gonna move to page 10. And for this one, we have the two continuums here are cautious and adventurous, and then holding back and speaking out, right? So when we think about vision, again, these continuum are very specific to the topic we're doing. So here it's vision, right? So there's other times when, being cautious is okay, right? And maybe even needed and preferred. But when we think about vision, we're trying to be more adventurous and we're trying to speak out, say, this is a good idea, this is a stupid idea, right? Whatever it is, whoever you're working with there. So look at your results there, and then again, discuss this. What we're trying to do is what, a couple groups already did that I walked around to, is we're trying to figure if we're not adventurous, right? How can we become more adventurous when we have to work on vision? Don't always have to be there, but, how can we do that? Let's just bring up our mind. If you think about the vision stage, right, there's not a lot of risk there, right? So why not just cut loose, right? So it's just to give a quick example, when I worked at Goodyear, one of the things they wanted me to do was bring more risk, make people less risk averse, bring more risk into the organization, get people to take risks. So there was multiple aspects to it, but one of the aspects I had to do was to teach them that there's a right time to take risks and a wrong time to take risks, because a lot of it was rooted, a lot of the risk aversion was rooted into the Firestone event that had happened about a year before I got there, right? So like, oh, wow, nobody wants tires blowing up on cars, right? Which I agree with. But guess what? When we're looking at possibilities of, what all compounds could we mix and all those complex things that you have to go through, when it's still in the computer, no one's car's getting wrecked when the idea's in the computer, right? So there is a certain time, once we start to get into prototypes, and then once we start going into production, let's be very cautious, right? But there's a time and place for it. So if, that's just one example, if you aren't on the adventurous thing, just open up your mind to it's, right? Nothing bad's gonna happen yet, right? We're just talking about creating the vision, and so this is the time to throw caution to the wind and be more adventurous. So, and then again, of course, the same for the hold back and speak out. So read your results, take a couple minutes to talk to your group, and then we'll move to the next one. Are there any questions online?
Yeah, I let them know that we want them to ask their questions. Why don't you ask if they can hear you?
If there are any questions online at all, just feel free to unmute yourself and speak out, or you can put them in the chat, and I'm happy to work through those.
When it's wrong, yeah.
Vision.
And you speak out. That's where mine, I think it's changed.
I'm very boisterous.
That's why you're right. Just can't keep my mouth shut.
No, I mean, if it's something you want to offer, and I think they respect it too. Especially.
So how would you approach how to you are see where
You tell them bosses what to do and this is
So,
what to do.
Climate,
I always have
climate, general. If we get it wrong, let's just say, walk out of that first meeting and say, I think this is it. And then you like call somebody up and say, mind you, look at this, and then
Oh, yeah.
so there's still time.
Yeah.
And then, as just general. Honestly, we're like that too. And it's a matter of trying to maybe meet with it, right? And that's not always the best choice. But I think it's, again, like, not the same thing at the same time. Like, let's talk about the reasons we should take risks, right? Let's talk about the reasons we should take a chance on this particular thing. And then you're both talking about it. And then let's talk about the reasons we shouldn't do it, right? And then let's put it together.
Yes.
Right? Because the problem is, it ends up being more of a debate, even if it's not negative or anything at all, or any ill intentions, like, but as you're talking about, all the reasons to take a risk, and she's giving all the yeah buts, right? Kind of a thing, it's hard to get on the same page, whereas if you're, okay, we're gonna talk about all the reasons we should take this risk, we're gonna talk about all the reasons we shouldn't take this risk, what do you think? And then, are there any, like, things that would still be valuable, but in life as risky, right? Kind of a thing, if you look at it and say, yeah, that's pretty risky, right? Kind of a thing is, are there steps we can take, so we aren't all in the beginning, or maybe we try to do half of it, where, the situation, whatever the situation. Like you can maybe make a compromise that isn't compromised from it's gonna be bad and just give us a little bit for a result.
Yeah.
It's gonna allow us.
Yeah, how about you?
I'll probably be coming back.
All right, take another minute to finish up.
I guess.
Very diverse.
Or just a circle.
All right, let's come back together. We are going to now move to the next one. I realize you may not have all the answers you want, come up with all the ideas for each one, but based off our time, I have to kind of move us through. And the idea is, I want to get through all of them so you have a little bit of understanding of each one, get a little bit of ideas and direction, some from each category. And then, when you go home, you have more time to think about it. You can talk to your partner if you have one, to yourself if you don't. You can reach out to somebody at Noble to get some help on them. So this is kind of just giving you the groundwork of where to focus and how to focus. We won't come out of here with all the answers, but hopefully some answers, and then set you up for getting more answers. All right, so page 11 is the next one. And we're still on vision, so the same deal we're going to do here. Here it's decide independently versus seek counsel, and then push forward versus explore implications. So again, it's kind of the this is another one where, you know, the seeking counsel can be good. That's why it's good to be part of this group. There's lots of good counsel that can come, you know, from Noble, if that's an area, even if you're strong on seeking counsel, right? That's a good area to work on. But, you know, if you like to decide independently, that's where we're going to encourage you to, you know, push yourself out of your comfort zone, get more people involved, get more ideas. You can take them or not take them, just because somebody gives you an idea, right? Doesn't mean you have to take it, but getting more ideas is always good. So take a couple minutes to read your results and then talk about those. And I'll just give you a couple minutes for this one as well. And if you have questions for me, let me know. I'm happy to walk around, answer questions online.
I think one of the things I'm learning as I'm hearing from you is like the leadership strength is on the right-hand side, and if you're on the left, it's not seen as a strength.
Not seen as a strength for this.
For
So,
this,
yes.
right? So I'm like focusing on the details is not a strength.
Yes.
Oh my,
Absolutely.
deciding independently is not a strength.
And that's
I'm like,
why
whoa.
when I was answering questions to one group, like I was giving the answer as compared to this and then in general. So a lot of times, if you're on one side of the continuum or the other, you're likely to be there whether you're talking about vision or something else. However, there are certain times when not being on the right is a good thing, right? But for when we're talking about vision, we're talking about deciding on your own or seeking counsel, we're encouraging you to seek counsel. So if you're really far to the left, you're gonna have to push yourself, right? Probably gonna have to go down, make a list, check off the list of all the different people you're gonna do, so you do it to hold yourself accountable, right? Some things like that you can incorporate to make sure that you kind of force yourself to do what you aren't likely to do. And this person here is in the lower lower third, so this, whoever this result was, it's just a sample. You know, they probably would benefit from saying, okay, no, I'm gonna ask some people, right? And here's who I'm gonna ask, and I'm gonna commit to doing it by X date, and then I'm gonna check them off as I do them. That gives them a way to hold themselves accountable.
What, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are gonna fall on the left here.
Yes.
I heard that.
Wait, fall on the left where?
On the,
Decide independently.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm way.
Oh, good for
Yeah.
you.
If it would have been longer, I probably would have been even more.
Where are you at?
Oh, decide independently.
Okay.
I'm in the left one.
Like how far, cause
Oh,
like where are you at, like on the continuum?
a third past the line, so not strong to
Okay.
the left, but a third into it.
Got you, okay.
Where are you, Lamar?
I am somewhat close to the middle, but a little bit just before the line of city council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I'm all the way to the right.
To the right, good. That's a strength, right?
Yeah, I think like for vision, mostly like this one, we have to see for other areas.
And how many bricks?
all right, all right, we kind of did that one together, that's cool. Let's do the other one. What about push forward and explore implications?
Me, I'm running through brick walls over here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm all the way at Explore, like literally on the arrow of Explore.
The door.
That's literally me, like, guys, let me do that.
She was like, let me look it up. I'm like,
Gosh.
That's a strength, that's a great strength.
All right, what about, is anybody on the push forward?
Jermaine.
no, I'm all the way this way.
Yeah, push forward.
Oh, yeah. That's why I said running through brick walls.
What are the dangers of
I'm in the
that?
middle.
What are the dangers of pushing forward in the vision stage?
I definitely feel like whatever comes, I can handle it, so I don't really worry about like precautions. I feel like whatever it is, I'm equipped for it, and if I'm not, the Lord gonna help me.
I feel like it's so numerous.
She don't want to scratch, okay? She don't want no kind of, and I'm just like, we got Band-Aids.
Again, that's why I think a lot of entrepreneurs fall far to the left on both of these.
Yeah,
And that's why we, or the leader, or entrepreneur leadership might be two different things here.
yeah.
Sometimes aren't, need help. to need the people who are on the far right.
Well,
help lead
here's
the way.
here's how I respond to that. I think leader, entrepreneur are interchangeable in
Yeah.
this case, not always, but in this case, because we're talking about a specific task of visions, right? So, there might be some different tendencies within those two groups, if that's what you're saying, that I would agree with. But the end result of where you end up, the behavior you want to exhibit will be the same. So we want to seek counsel during the vision creation stage, right? And then we want to explore the implications,
Absolutely.
right?
I mean, does that make me wondering, like being on this side, what is the outcome, what is the obstacle, what's gonna hold us back? What, how can we be successfully achieve? I think having that parts are supportive.
Yeah.
Megan has something in the chat as well.
Oh, okay.
Oh, hey
Megan,
guys. Yeah. I've just been putting everything in the chat. Thanks. So yeah, I'm less of an entrepreneur. I would say that I do have strong leadership qualities in my past positions I've held, and I have been, a manager, a leader. But I definitely, in this one in particular, fall in that right quadrant for the seeking counsel and exploring implications. So I would say I rely on others and seek a lot of guidance from experts, in different areas to help kind of propel my vision along.
Okay, very good, thank you. And then Jamila asked the question, she said she was on the far left here at push forward. She asked, does that make her reckless? I'm gonna throw that out to the group. What do you think about that? I would agree. Why do you say no though?
Well, first of all, she's here.
I like that answer.
Whatever. Push forward. So I don't know why I think that. I just would say that I don't feel like it's reckless. Yeah. I don't know why I think that though.
Okay.
I don't feel like it's reckless because you don't dwell on like what could have been or what should have happened. You kind of like move on. You figure out your mistake and move on.
I think this is where the noble founders are strong visionary people. And they're gonna push forward, kind of like you, Jamala. But this is where they would say you have a visionary and you have an integrator. So for that pushing forward, that you're gonna drive the vision, you're gonna keep the mission going, you're that drive, right? Yeah. But I think you need that integrator to build a successful business. You need that person who's gonna explore the implication and handle the details and make sure it's in alignment. Whereas if you get too caught up in those details, it's not gonna move forward at all. You're gonna be stifled, right? So you've got the drive to keep it going.
And to compliment that, something just came to me is if I am pushing forward without the consensus of buy-in from people, then I could be pushing by myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I could be carrying this load that's just entirely too heavy to share this load, delegate, get other people involved in it, and it could just be me by myself doing this. So that's what I like. It could be some pushback on that.
I think that's why on my scale, my seat council was way seat council and my push forward was, because I feel like the people that I trust, like my seat council, if it was longer, I'd be way on the end. So I do push forward, but I'm like, okay, what's your opinion? What's your opinion? And then I'm kind of like, I can handle the pushback. We're gonna do it,
So I think, here's how I would respond. I like everything everybody said, I agree with it. The thing I would add to it, I think, is like, there is a time to push forward and there's a time to hold back.
Yeah.
But we're specifically talking about vision, so I'm gonna bring us back to that. So the reason why these two are the preferred, which I agree with, is you're gonna seek counsel and then you're gonna explore the implications of that and the implications of the choices you're making because you wanna get your guardrails right.
For sure.
Remember, you talked about the guardrails, using the vision for that. So we want to take the right amount of time to do that. And we don't want to get counsel and get all of the ideas. We want to figure out what are the implications of that for this vision. Then, once you have the vision, yeah, we gotta get, and that's to Susie's point, then we gotta get pushing forward and make stuff happen, right? And that's where we get to the getting people aligned, which is the part you brought up, Lamar. And then, of course, we have to execute, and that's where we really want to start pushing forward. So it's doing the right things at the right time. So again, I don't know what the right amount of time is. It's different for everybody. But yes, it's not 6.5 years, right? For anybody, right? But, right, we did, so there is a right amount of time to do it, and then we have to, pick our poison and make it happen. So there is that. But if the danger in pushing forward too fast in the vision stage is we may not get it right. We might not understand what those implications are. We might not understand what's possible. We might not understand, this is a great idea overall, but there's a couple holes in that, right? That's my ideas. I don't know about anybody else, but usually there's a good thread in there, but there's a couple things you need to prune off of there too as well. So that's kind of how that all works together.
Yeah, I'm with you at the first, if we just without concrete or good explanation assessment, even together with the board or our team, we don't have strong, tangible team to enroll them into the vision that we're bringing.
Yes.
So it's very important to have that, just explore it and check it and make it clear. We know what's the outcome and how to share it. And when we share to the board or supporters, we can enroll them strongly. And then once we establish it, that's where the moving forward kicks in.
Yep.
Right?
Nice.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Maybe for president.
Yeah, maybe for president, for sure. All right, we're gonna move on so we can make sure we touch on all of them. Here we're gonna talk about alignment, so that's the second, remember? So here are the scriptures, so let's talk about those, both of those, and tell me why I chose those.
Why'd you choose those, Bryan?
No, you're telling me why. That was better than why I chose.
I have an answer, but my answer is another scripture. How can two walk together unless they agree?
Oh, yeah.
Amos,
That's good.
3:3.
Yeah, I mean, if you're walking with somebody and you guys are not in agreement, what happens when they wanna go left and you go right? I mean, and you wanna go right, you know?
Yeah, I like that one. Absolutely.
The power with the Corinthians, like she was saying, though, is if you're in agreement, then you're in a better path or better track to getting the goal.
Yes. Absolutely. Anything else to add?
Well, what if the trail is a circle and both of y'all go 2 different ways, y'all still in the circle?
I mean, that's a very valid question, and I think you can still get to that path, but going in the circle, I think it makes more challenges, right?
Unless you've agreed to go opposite ways.
But I would also say on a journey to building a vision or building a business or whatever you want to call it, the journey that you're on matters, not just the destination, because you are cultivating some character, some perseverance, some integrity, some whatever the destination or the next level requires. So sometimes going on the same path matters because there's some things that you may need to develop in your character, both people, that are necessary for the vision to move forward.
That's good.
I have a question for you. I'm not sure your name, but
Jamie.
Jamie, okay. Why did you say a circle? Because if we're moving forward in a journey and a destination, we're not gonna come back to the same place we started. So I'm just thinking there must be some reason you said circle.
I mean, I didn't think of it that way, but even in the circle, you just I don't know, I guess I was thinking of a trail. Even if you're going in a circle, you're still going forward, you're still completing it.
Oh,
Okay.
Kind of in the sense of divide and conquer, if we're trying to do the same thing and we're going it together, you're kind of both at the same pace. So if one person's strength is here
That's good.
and your weakness is
You stay
here.
united.
Yeah, so it's why would we both go the same direction and it's 2 different paths and you wanna go both paths, we gonna split up.
So I would say that applying that to the real world. I think, if your destination is here and you come to that, and there's a good reason and you both agree, you're gonna go left, I'm gonna go right, probably that could make sense.
But that was a good thought
Yeah.
provoking question.
All right, let's move on. So the defining alignment in your book, page 12, it talks about, getting buy-in and getting clarity. The group has brought that up already, so that's good. And then there's really the task and the emotional perspective, especially if you're trying to get others aligned or involved in your vision. Even for solopreneur, right? You got to convince customers to use your services, your products, whatever your business is, right? So you're going to have to get them aligned with what it is, get them excited about it, right? There's always going to be, the heart and mind. Sometimes people say it like that, right? So that's important to do. That's the internal, external. I touched on that a little bit. So for internal, the bigger we get, the harder it is to get people aligned. So we got to do all kinds of things to make that happen. The smaller we are, the easier it is to stay aligned, but you still got to do it, right? And if you're just a small company, you still got to get everybody aligned and keep everybody moving in the same direction. And then the external thing is, right, sometimes we want our customers, the people we interact with, to be aligned with our vision as well. Obviously, they aren't taking steps to make that vision happen, but they might want our products or services. They're most likely going to do business with us if they're aligned and understand what our vision is, right? So that's why the external thing is, and then there might be other stakeholders, vendors, or maybe if you're getting to the point where you need investors, right? Again, as much as they're gonna sit down and crunch the numbers, they're also gonna have to believe in the vision, right? As well, so they have to do that as well. And it's really kind of ongoing. Again, the bigger it is, bigger company is, the harder it is to do, the more time you gotta focus on it. But even in a small organization, you gotta, it's an ongoing thing, always trying to keep people aligned to the vision, and then whatever the particular strategy or objectives you have for those any given time period, right? You gotta keep people aligned to that, help them understand, okay, this is our 2024 objectives, right? And this is how they fit into the vision, and that's why we're doing them, keep people going. A lot of times we do that through communications. It might be one-on-one, might be group, might be the entire organization, but just all kinds of different communications to help people going on. And then as you start working in larger organizations, a lot of times we'll use things like performance management and those kind of systems, right, to help people aligned in with the vision. All right, so our three drivers here were clarity, dialogue, and inspiration. So we're going to page 13. And here we're doing offer intuition versus explain the rationale, and then impromptu messaging versus structured messaging. And the goal here is explaining the rationale and then structured messaging. So read through your results and then we can. Yes.
Some when they were on the resource, was not so much be aware of helping us. I didn't know maybe when you say
We're touching it, right? We'll talk about it a little bit at the end. That's like during our discussion. We're trying to come up with ideas for moving here, right? But if you want to have a deeper conversation.
Okay.
Bryan.
All right, so for this one, we want to be over here and explain the rationale and structured messaging. So, people need to explain it. So if we're going to get people aligned, they have to understand it and explain it. in more detail. This was something I struggled with, right? I had this intuition, I don't share all the context. Next thing you know, people don't understand. So you gotta make sure you're doing that. And then the structured messaging really just helps people follow along. It also, the reason to create structured messaging is to what I think it was Jamila earlier talked about. When she writes stuff down, it's different. It's like, okay, that's not how it sounded in my head, right? So when we write it down, that helps make sure we're even more clear. So as we go out and communicate it, it's more likely that people will understand it. And then, of course, we have to communicate it often. Right, so the interest in time, I'm gonna move us along a little bit more. We had some really good discussions, but I wanna make sure we at least touch on each piece. So on page 14, you can see where your dot ends up here. So for this one is present information versus exchange perspectives, and then challenging versus receptive. So here we want you to exchange perspectives, because if we're only talking one way, if all that communication is only one way, we don't really know if people are receiving the message or receiving it like they should be receiving it, right? And have a full understanding. So that's why we're sharing perspectives, even though we are trying to communicate a vision. And then for challenging, being receptive, if you're receptive, you'll start to get people to talk about what they don't understand, what they don't like, what their struggles are, right? So I always say in change management, resistance is your friend. Don't get upset about it, right? Understand it. So this is kind of the same thing here, where we're receptive to that pushback and saying, no, that doesn't make sense, right? Or I don't know how that makes sense, but I don't know how my job fits in, right? Or what decision I should make right here in this situation based on that. You want people to be able to share those things and get those things out. My screen went dark.
If it should come right back on, jiggle the.
To your laptop?
No, laptop's on.
If I scored that question wrong, can I go back and take the test again? It's on now.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we can talk about that. Is it okay?
Okay, I can take it again, because that's gonna change a little bit of my shading and I scored that part wrong.
All right, that one,
What is going on?
I don't know, whenever I go to that next slide. No, whenever I go to the next one.
What if you try to slide through it?
Yeah, that is another interesting thing that I noticed. So in this assessment, there was no back button. We were just going next. So if you're thinking.
You can't change your options.
You locked in.
Only on that page we can change.
Okay.
If,
There it went down again.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, there's the one where.
Oh.
Yeah.
Every time I go to that slide, that goes away. So let's do this. I'm just gonna talk to this one. It's on page 15 in your books, so you can see it, or look at your neighbors. On the left side is reserved, the right side is expressive. So here, the advantage of being more expressive is obviously, creating more excitement around the vision.
I think it's swapped out of the HDMI. It says it can't see the HDMI.
Hit the arrow up button in the middle. Oh, There you go.
It puts you back to the whiteboard mode.
hit PC. There you go. And on the left. Somehow the HDMI is not plugged in, right?
There's a cable just flaked out one of the two.
Must be that, because we didn't touch it.
And luckily they can still see it online. You just read through it.
All right. Okay, we're going to adjust and just kind of try to get through this without the screen. Sorry. Okay. All right, so on page 15, I swore I wasn't going to use the podium, but
Yeah.
I guess I am now. So on page 15, we have reserved expressive, so we want to be more expressive. We want to try to create inspiration around the vision, get people excited about it. if we're not expressive at all, right? Who's gonna get excited about that? And then, matter of fact versus encouraging. Here, you wanna be more encouraging, right? Include people, get them involved, get them excited. So if you're on the left, we gotta figure out how to move you more to the right. The final area we're gonna look at is alignment. And here we have this scripture. I'll read them since we don't have them up here. The first one is James 2:17. In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. So, right, that's God encouraging us to, take action, and we have a vision, but we got to make it happen through our actions. And then Colossians 3:23-24. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. So I think that one for me is really relevant, impacted my life many years ago. But thinking about it in those terms, like, it doesn't almost matter like what other people's opinions are. It doesn't matter what those are. You need to be excited. If you're going through a new chapter or a difficult time, you're doing it for the Lord. So you should be excited and energetic about it, not just okay with it, right? You need to be excited and energetic about it. And then on page 16, that's where it gives you the definition according to the instrument, turning imagined future condition into reality, right? So we have an idea, we got people aligned, now we got to make it happen. So it makes the vision actionable. It gives you the criteria, which is what the guardrails we talked about earlier, right? So spot on there. Criteria for developing strategies, objectives, goals. Different organizations use different terms. They use different, like sometimes they have more than one or two, or they have all of them. It almost doesn't matter. Just so it's clear, and you use that clarity to then develop actions, whatever you call those actions. Develop actions that are going to get you there. And you can monitor and say, yeah, we're getting closer, or no, we're not. And then it gives you a sense of achievement, right? As you get things done, right? It's a sense of achievement, as well as others, if there's others involved. And then on page 17, we are going to look at those continuum. It's low key versus driven. And here, of course, we want to be driven, especially this one's really true in being an entrepreneur, because the one thing that I find the difference in having been able to work in lots of different types of organizations, in big organizations, there's pros and cons to it. The con is like stuff can get hidden, right? Inefficiencies, ineffectiveness, not getting stuff done very quickly. Those all things can get a little bit hidden in all the profits and stuff like that. Small business, now, you're going to eat or you're not going to eat, right? So if we aren't driven and getting things done, it's even more heightened in the entrepreneurial situation than it is in an organization. And then being reactive or initiating things. Of course, if we're going to get stuff done, we want to initiate things. We want to try to look forward and anticipate problems. We want to be able to manage if things are getting done or not getting done. Then page 18, we have improvise versus plan. So here, planning is better, and then follow first impressions versus analyze in depth, and the preferred is analyzing in depth. So when you think about the execution, this is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. This is where we get things done. So we have to have a plan. We have to be more planful about it. Not so much in the vision stage. That's when we're open and figuring things out and being big and all those things. But now we have to narrow it down to specific plans. We know if we're getting things done, we're not getting things done. And then analyzing in depth, here's where you do want to get into the details. This is where the detail orientation comes into play, where you can say we're making progress in these two areas, but there's another area where we're not making the progress we need to. So we got to figure that out. And then on page 19, this is the two continuum, or maintain harmony, which is a good thing to do. We want to have harmony, but we want to be able to challenge each other as well, right? And so we need to be able to address problems. We need to be able to be direct with people in the right way, but we can't just focus on harmony at the expense of getting things done. And it's really, I coin it long-term nice. Sometimes we don't deal with those issues in the short term because we're trying to be nice, right? But long term, it's not going to be good for them. It's not going to be good for the organization. So you want to think long term nice and address those problems as they come up. The next one is offering less praise versus offering more praise. This is my really weakness. I'm on the offering less praise side of it for some reason, but offering more praise to people is encouraging to them, especially if it's specific, right? And the way our brains work is we hold on to negative information longer than positive information. So we got to be giving ratios like 6 to 1-ish. Positive feedback to needs improvement feedback kind of a thing. That's why they're saying we got to offer more praise as people are accomplishing the things we want to, or as we're accomplishing the things we need to. For a solopreneur, guess what? We had to create the vision. We had to create alignment with ourselves. And then we got to make it happen. We got to give ourselves praise as well along the way as we have successes. And then the final is the encouragement to, take the information we learned today. Great leadership does take practice, right? And refinement and learning more about yourself, learning more about what's appropriate in any given situation. And we talked about a lot today, like in certain situations, being detail-oriented is a positive thing. In certain situations, it's not as good. So we got to know what our tendencies are, and then adapt to the situation. And then, of course, we're always going to capitalize our strengths. Sometimes you hear leadership development experts get into the argument of, should we focus on strengths or focus on opportunities? My answer is yes, we should. Most times they like to argue one side or the other. I'm not about that. Profile on page 20, this is where you start to develop a plan. So this lays out your 3 strengths for you specifically in there. And then page 21 to 23, it breaks out your opportunities because those are the ones you're going to do a plan for, right? So that's why they're on 3 separate pages as opposed to 1, because it gives you an area to start to plan what are those actions going to be. So if you think about what we covered today, we did get to spend a little bit of time, not a lot because of our time limits, but we did get to spend a little bit of time of saying, okay, if I'm on the left, what do I have to do to get to the right? As you think about your specific situation, obviously you can think more in depth about that than what we did today, after you get back and have time to kind of process the information a little bit more. And that was it.
Wow, that's wonderful. Can you stop sharing your screen so it'll go back to the people online? Wow, thank you, Bryan. I've learned a lot today, not only about myself, but even about leadership that I had not before. And like, if many of you have probably taken the Myers-Briggs, we've got the Working Genius assessment that we offer here at Noble, and we've also recommended Colby test and assessment there. I want somebody to just collaborate all of those now, like what do we gain from all of those together? We definitely see some alignment. Me and Steve were talking about, well, this is alignment with what it said on my Working Genius, but then there were some other areas that were new.
I could definitely do
to
that.
us. I wondered, Bryan might be our guy to help pull all those things together. That would be amazing and awesome. Anybody online, do you have any questions or comments here before we're wrapping up there?
Yeah, no, this was really good. I always like seeing kind of where I fall in different areas. So it was really eye-opening to see not just where we fall on the chart, but then on that line, kind of if we're going that entrepreneur route, where we really want to be. So I thought that was really good. So thank you, Bryan.
Yeah, you're welcome.